Welcome to the Highly Sensitive Leadership Podcast, a monthly podcast dedicated to teaching highly sensitive people how to step forward as an aspiring sensitive leader so that you can feel confident in your own skin by embracing your natural gifts and strengths as the royal advisor that you are. I am your host, Karina Antonopoulos, coach and mentor for highly sensitive people, and creator of the program, Synchronize Your Life. This is episode 4 on using your authentic voice. Today's guest is a highly sensitive friend and colleague of mine who has always inspired me to use my voice in ways I didn't realize I could. You see, I was a young girl who often kept her words to herself. I didn't act out like other rambunctious kids my age. I didn't shut out with anger, and I didn't seek attention by being the most charismatic in the spotlight. Yes, I will admit some called me a goody two-shoes, but to be honest, I did this for my safety. Instead of acting out, I observed. I thought about things deeply. I felt deeply about what I observed, and I cherished one-on-one intimate conversations. To be honest, being in the spotlight always felt way too overwhelming for me and would often make me retreat into myself. What you might not realize, though, is that being a more introverted young child and not having a means to consistently express myself created challenges for me when I got older that later I needed to work through in order to be able to share my message with you all here. I knew I had a lot to share, but the words never seemed to flow in the way I wanted them to, which is why I'm so grateful to have met people like my guest today, who has taught me such things as using my authentic voice. Today's guest, Stephanie Bonti-Lebert, has taught me not just simple linguistics of activating different tones with my physical voice, but also how to activate my energy when sharing my message with the work I do with sensitive leaders. She, in a way, simply by being her most amazing self, has given me permission over the years to listen to how my words feel. She always reminded me to sing, which I definitely was never good at, but of course loved to do, and speak based on the feeling that was activated for me in that very moment. This was a monumental shift for me. I never thought to use my voice in this way, marrying how it sounded with how it felt. This is a gift I've cherished and utilized in so many different ways on my journey, whether it was communicating more authentically in my relationships, sharing wisdom in my virtual mastermind program, Synchronize Your Life, or giving myself permission to consistently show up in front of the camera for my YouTube channel. If I did not allow myself the gift of using my authentic voice, I most definitely would not be sharing this podcast with you today. So let's welcome Stephanie onto the show. Stephanie is a lifelong performer and lover of all things on the stage. She holds a master's degree in vocal performance, a minor in speech pathology, and has performed in operas, musicals, cabaret shows, amusement parks, and dinner theaters at the local and professional levels. Today, she coaches both singers and speakers to connect more powerfully with the world by using their voice. Her mission is to help others stand in their power and be the voice of their passions. If you'd like to learn the tips that have taught me how to use my voice in more effective and powerful ways, email Stephanie at stephanie@empoweryourvoice.com to receive her free video series on the 3 secrets to a captivating voice. These 3 videos will teach you how to create a powerful, beautiful, and captivating voice when you sing or speak. So enjoy. Alrighty, wonderful. So let's dive in with my first question. Here we go. How is discovering you being a highly sensitive person help you in using your authentic voice on a daily basis?
I think when I discovered that I was a highly sensitive person, I began a journey where it sort of uncovered some things for me. And I think the biggest aha was around that I had permission to use my voice in ways that beforehand I might have felt hesitant, like maybe I was too different from other people around me and I shouldn't say those things out loud because no one would understand what I was talking about. And I've only really discovered that I was highly sensitive less than 2 years ago. So in these last 2 years, the journey, and my background, of course, is from performing and being on stages. So the journey has started to really expand beyond what I can do as a singer, but what I'm able to say as a speaker and as a highly sensitive person. and how they're really, they merge together. How I use my voice for singing and how I use my voice for speaking are really not so different. And I mean that not only from a physiological level, which is also true, but from that mental and spiritual energy that comes behind it. I've always been attracted to performing and singing because of my ability to be a deep feeler and a deep thinker and wanting to really express myself in those ways. And it always felt really safe when you're on a stage in a show, because it's a script and they tell you what to sing and what lines to read, and you put your magic behind it, and that's acceptable. But when I was speaking to people or getting up in front of groups, I felt that I censored myself until I started to become more comfortable with what it meant to be a highly sensitive. So I guess that's a long roundabout way of answering your question, but
Yeah, you make a really great point. And a piece that stood out to me was around feeling different, and maybe before not really knowing why. And so in a way, by accepting this piece of you, someone who thinks very deeply, and maybe if you were to speak out, you'd be saying something that some people aren't thinking about, right? Because we tend to think on a deeper level. So we went through several rabbit holes, and it takes a little bit longer for someone to kind of catch up to where we got to that thought. And then they're like, where did that come from, right? And there's all that shame there. I know that in college, my friends used to call those Karina-isms, because I would just come out with these things that I would say that was completely out there. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's totally related and totally connected. And they just laugh at me. And it was out of fun, but I will say on a deeper level, I did kind of feel hurt that, like, wow, like I feel a little misunderstood. And in a way, it prevented me from speaking out and using my voice more because of that fear of being misunderstood. Mm-hmm. And, fear of how it's going to be judged, and that shame that comes along with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big piece is when you can really accept this part of yourself, this huge part of yourself, being a highly sensitive person and being able to stand in that, then there's no hiding. There's no hiding who you are and what you're about. And I would say for me, I'm even then able to stand out and be seen in more ways and be vulnerable and be okay with that.
Absolutely. And I think for me, it was feeling either that I was too much for people. So if I were to actually say what I was thinking, I would be seen as too much or not enough. So that it's like the extremes. You either feel like you're not enough for people or that you're just too much for people. Mm. And I think in the last 2 years, what's been happening for me is the journey has been around embracing who I really am, going ahead and verbalizing that with people. And of course, it's still a journey. So sometimes those old emotions still come up. But the more I accept myself and who I am, the more my words start to resonate with people. And the more they start to accept it, and the more impact I start to have as a highly sensitive person and as a highly sensitive speaker, that my actual strengths are what everyone needs in order to be able to take that next step in some way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And something that just popped up for me is that our voice is our frequency, right? Mm-hmm. That's our radio station, and our body is our radio station tower in which to emit that frequency. And each of us have a unique frequency in which we broadcast. And if we're not being authentic with ourselves, if we're kind of saying things and doing things that are not in alignment with us, then we're broadcasting like a false frequency. And no wonder why people are misunderstanding us, and no wonder why, it's very confusing for people to connect with us. And then they put a wall up because they don't know what to do. If you're someone who's into the chakras, this is very much a third chakra thing, is self-acceptance. For a lot of highly sensitive people, we have a lot of healing to do around our third chakra. And I remember, Stephanie, we had a conversation recently about how the third chakra is connected to the fifth chakra. And the fifth chakra is actually your voice, your throat chakra, and how much they're connected. And the more you are in that space of self-acceptance, the more your throat chakra can open up and allow yourself to speak and use that authentic voice every day.
Yeah. And I remember having periods in my career where I was very, very successful as a performer. And I think it's because I was in self-acceptance. I just owned my own power as a performer. I owned who I was. I was able to go into an audition and be the part, in a way, go to the frequency of whatever that role was that they wanted to hear and be able to emulate that. And it's so true that we each have our own uniqueness. And if we're not in alignment, from a, auditioning perspective, for example, when people audition, I can give them all the great techniques on how to sing the song and how to do the breathing and all of that. But if they don't feel the part, if they don't feel that they can actually play that part, or they don't feel that they're connected emotionally to the music that they're singing, there's a misalignment that happens. And usually you don't get cast in the show. Speaking world, it's exactly the same. It's you write the speech that has all the right words in it and says all the right things, or you have that 60-second pitch you take to networking or whatever that is for you. But if you're not fully behind it, if you're not embodying the energy of that message, there's that misalignment and people won't hire you. And it's, it's very similar.
Yeah. And that makes me think of how sometimes you can go to a speaking event or any show or whatever, and the person is very much speaking from their head. Mm-hmm. And there is that lack of feeling.
Exactly. And your feelings affect your voice.
Yeah.
Because when you're upset, for example, and you're crying, you find it hard to speak, right? So the feelings are creating that tension in your throat, in your fifth chakra, and you hold it here. You hold your emotion in your throat oftentimes. So if you're really excited, it'll come through. If you're really sad, it'll come through. If you're really angry, it will come through. And we even say words like, she sounded so angry. I could tell she was really upset. And what you really mean by that is I heard it in the sound of her voice. And so we are constantly communicating what we really mean all the time. And even if you're not consciously aware of it, you are definitely unconsciously aware of it when you're having a conversation with someone. It was really funny, actually, just today, I had a former student. He took lessons with me when he was in like middle school, freshman year of high school, and now he's graduated from high school. He calls me today, and he's reading me a script, and he's saying, it's basically a Cutco script, so Cutco knives. And I recognized the script right away. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm new to this. I just need someone to practice with. There's no obligation to buy. And I'm like, Zach, what? I said, I'm happy to let you practice, but I would suggest that you come up with your own version of this. Like, really, why is it that you love to do this? Why would you love to sell Cutco knives? Why would you love to be able to, make money in this way this summer before you go off to college? That's going to have more of an impact on me than reading the script that Cutco gave you.
Yes.
So I just had a giggle. We could have that conversation because we're good friends, and he was a former student and all that. But it just made me laugh because it's not about the words. It's not about having the right formula for what to say. It's really about how are you connecting with whatever it is that you're talking about, and is there emotion behind it? Are you excited about this opportunity? Are you scared? Are you just practicing this whole thing and hoping that nobody's going to just hang up on you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's so much internal dialogue that can happen to then shut down that feeling and shut down that connection to what it is that you're really doing. Mm-hmm. Maybe we could talk a little bit about what are some of those internal dialogue. I like to call them the ego mind that you've heard with your students or even with yourself.
Well, oftentimes it'll range everything from, what will they think of me? So for a lot of my students, when a recital time comes around, they're worried about what the other students will think. They're worried about comparing themselves. Will I be the best one in the room? Will I be the worst one in the room? Will I make my parents proud? Often teenagers will go there. They'll say, my mom's been paying for these lessons for a whole year. I hope I live up to her expectation. And, she feels like she gets her money's worth or whatever that is. Or just, they just want to make them proud in some way. So they're looking for validation. And when your voice is inside your body, anything you do feels so personal. It feels like it's not just, did you sing the song well, or did you give that speech in a strong way, but does that mean that you're a good person or a bad person? So we actually go there to the value of who we are as individuals based on how well we perform in our singing, our performing, our speaking, our selling, whatever that may look like.
Wow. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And if you don't perform well, maybe that day, you believe it becomes a reflection of who you are. Mm-hmm. There's something wrong with me because I didn't do well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even in my own journey, I remember I wasn't satisfied unless I had the leading role in the show. And oftentimes in the height of my career, honestly, I was landing a lot of leading parts. So it was validating a lot of the time, but when I didn't get the part I wanted, it felt devastating to me. It felt like, what's wrong with me? What did I not do correctly? What could I have done to prepare myself better, to do it in a different way? And it really attached it, to my value, which is really a tough way to go through life, or even, especially as a performer, just to like survive as a singer, because you go job to job.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the worst sort of energies to be in, when you're constantly saying, oh, today I'm valuable because I got the leading role. And then tomorrow, oh, I must be horrible and no one likes me. And, I didn't get the part I wanted. That back and forth, that up and downness is a really challenging way to live.
Yeah. So using the external circumstances to determine your value
Mm-hmm.
and your worth and how good enough you are.
Yeah. And I'm always encouraging my students about the process. It's about the process.
Yeah.
And it's about the steps forward that you're making. You're always growing in some way. Even if it feels like you've reached a plateau of some kind, there's always still progress that's you're making on that journey forward. And if you concentrate on that, if you concentrate on what's going well and how you've improved over time, that is the best way to keep yourself out of that cycle and to keep yourself moving forward. And being present is another big one too, because when you're not present, you're thinking about, I hope they like me. I hope I do well. I wonder if they're going to cast me. I wonder if they're going to buy my products. Or if you're in the past, you're like, oh, I made a mistake yesterday. That person didn't like my pitch, so they're not going to like it today. Or I made a mistake in my song last week, so I'll probably do it again this week. That's not present. You're not present for yourself. So the more you can be in the moment of that talk, of that performance, and stay completely present to what's happening right now, the more success I really truly believe you'll have.
So it always comes back to that practice of mindfulness and presence and just being here now. And really what I tell people all the time is that, as highly sensitive people, we are constantly channeling so much energy. That's why we feel a lot. And so if we aren't grounded and we're not present, then that energy is just like this loose wire that just starts flailing around and feels very overwhelming and chaotic. And, it's very hard to get a grip on that. So that's kind of an extreme example. But when we allow ourselves to just be grounded here in this moment and just be and let it flow, it can flow in the direction it's meant to flow in. And it's like our higher self can then speak through us, so that we're not like formulating this whole dialogue in our brain before we have the conversation. I would say if you're doing that, just to question, am I being authentic? Yeah. If I have to like rehearse these conversations in my head before having them. And I'm saying that because I used to do that unknowingly. I used to, before having a conversation, or I would imagine scenarios of conversations before they would happen, just in case, so I'd be ready. And the thing is, like, those scenarios never came up. And then, of course, if I had a challenging conversation or confrontation, I would then go back and spend hours reviewing that conversation and how I could have said it better. And sometimes that was helpful because it was a form of assessment. But if I was then internalizing it as like, what's wrong with me, then it really just shut me down, and then I'd be drained. So no wonder why I'd feel so drained at the end of the day constantly, because I'm constantly thinking about things I didn't do well.
And I would even go so far as to say that when you're using your voice, the whole purpose is that you tap into your emotions. I think it's the channel for your emotions. So if you're not emotionally connected, you're missing the point. And to be fully emotionally connected means to be present. And there is value in practice. I mean, I obviously encourage all of my students to practice, but practice is really about getting comfort in how your body's functioning and getting comfort in using your voice in bigger ways. But every time you use it, it should be different. Even a song has the same notes, it has the same places where you want to breathe, it has the same melody every time, can be different. There are nuances, and as a highly sensitive, we really pick up on that, but there can always be nuances that are changing every time you perform. And that's how actors perform 8 shows a week. When you're on Broadway in New York, you're every day, sometimes 2 shows in a day. And sometimes for weeks on end. So how do you keep it fresh? How do you keep that performance authentic? And that's because it's always a little bit different. You're always interacting in a slightly different way. At least the good actors are. Otherwise, they're bored out of their mind, or you're not really interested in watching them anymore. But switch it up. As a speaker, I know what my main bullet points are. I know what my opening idea is going to be. I know what my closer is going to be. And I might practice that, but I also find that when I practice it, it comes out differently every time. And I'll come up with things that are new that I didn't even think about when I was writing it down, for example. So I might write an outline and say, okay, this is what I'm going to say. And then I speak it out loud. I'm like, well, that sounds ridiculous. I'm not going to say that. Mm-hmm. And it'll switch up. Now, part of that's because I'm a verbal processor. So a lot of times, just me talking out loud, I start to create the next thought rather than me planning it ahead of time. So that allows me to really be good at switching it up constantly. The minute I start hearing myself speak, then my thoughts become actually clearer. Mm-hmm. So just almost another piece of evidence that I'm really connecting in an authentic way when I actually start to hear the voice. So
yes, and it's even more clear because that channel is flowing. It's like opening up that faucet and you're really just letting it flow.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would say that is the main goal. That is the main goal for, whether you're a speaker, whether you are a performer, whether you're just someone who wants to speak more eloquently to your partner when sharing your most vulnerable experiences and, what's bothering you. Mm-hmm. Allowing yourself to be in that present space and to connect with that person, opening up at that faucet of vulnerability and let it flow. Understanding the container of, like you said, the bullet points of what I want to say, but once you actually open, letting that energy flow because you feel it in that moment, that's the goal I see. And I'm so happy that I'm aware of that. I feel like I didn't know that. I didn't know that I wanted that years ago when I didn't have that confidence. So many people all the time, they say to me, Karina, I want to feel more confident. And what I want to tell them is like, confidence is just like an external judgment you see of other people. Like you see that someone's confident, so you think, oh, I want that. But what does confidence really feel? And I have this conversation with many people, and really it's just that connection to yourself. And it's that trust that when you open your mouth, the right words are going to come out. Absolutely. And even if they come out wrong, or even if they come out messy, that's still the right way, because just the fact that you opened your mouth.
Yeah. And you feel safe doing it. I think confidence is this feeling of safety when you use your voice. Singers who are confident feel that when they use their voice, nothing bad is going to happen. Even if they make a mistake, even if they forget their words, even if they say the wrong thing in a speech, the world is not going to come crashing down. Therefore, you can say what you need to say, perform how you need to perform, and there is a feeling of safety there. There's a feeling of, here's my creation. I'm going to share it with you. It's not going to be perfect. That's not even the goal. That's not even a thought that I have in my mind. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to experience it. I'm here because I want to feel it. I want to see what happens next. I'm curious. I want to allow myself to emote and then see what the reaction will be. And just that alone is a huge success. And that is where my confidence lives, is just being in the presence of other people experiencing whatever it is I'm creating.
Yes, beautiful, beautiful. And just being in that practice and allowing yourself to show up. Everything needs a container. But if you make the container too small for yourself, then no wonder why you're beating yourself up, right? If you make the container all about perfectionism and being perfect, then yes, you're going to beat yourself up and you're going to feel very small because you put yourself in a small container. Why not expand that container to be something of, I'm here to experiment. I'm here to practice using my voice. I'm here to practice being vulnerable. And if I don't get it in this conversation, at least I know I'm heading in the right direction.
Yeah, the joy of the experiment.
Yes, yes.
That's what I want to always be in. And I often tell my students, especially my singing students, I want to experiment with sound. I want to see, what is your body capable of doing? Wouldn't it be fun just to experiment and see what crazy sounds we can make today? It's not always about beauty, right? It's not always about making the beautiful tone quality. Sometimes it can be about having some fun with it. Like, let's squeak, let's crack, let's make siren sounds. Let's do something crazy today so that we can just get familiar with our bodies, get familiar with what we're capable of, and then we can decide, we can make conscious choices about what we want to put forward in the world.
Yeah, becoming familiar with that body, that connection to your body, that voice, that frequency that is you, and having fun with it.
Yeah, that's the whole point, I think, of singing.
Yeah.
We have fun when we're singing. If we're not having fun, what are we doing? Like, what's the point? I have an adult singing class where I have these 4 lovely ladies, and their whole goal when they came into the first class was they wanted to have more joy when they sang. I was like, wow, that's so perfect. That's exactly what all of our goals should be. We want to have more joy. If that was all we were focused on, wouldn't life be so much easier instead of focusing on what we don't have, focusing on, hey, let's just have fun and see what happens.
Yes, I love that container of joy and fun. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you, Karina.
Hey, did you know that by simply subscribing to this podcast and leaving a review on why it's been valuable, it'll help our show be reached by more people? Consider how you can help create the ripple effect by sharing it with your favorite highly sensitive friend or family member. And if you're someone who feels small but has a big vision, or you're simply confused about where to take your life next, join me at hspleaders.com for a powerful masterclass on how to create your vision and thrive as a highly sensitive person. In this masterclass, you'll learn how to create your vision without feeling blocked with self-doubt, overwhelmed with fear, and stuck in paralyzing confusion. Start living with confidence now by activating your highly sensitive visionary strength so that you can thrive and feel safe in your own skin again. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll talk to you soon.